On September 17, 1787, a total of 39 state delegates signed the United States Constitution at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. The purpose of this constitution was to create a new system of government strong enough to act on a national level while also maintaining the rights of the 50 states and the citizens within them. To ensure the rights of the people were protected, Congress addressed to the state legislators 12 proposed amendments to add to the Constitution on September 25, 1789. By December 15, 1791, 10 amendments became effective and were adopted by the states. These amendments became known as the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution. These amendments create a fine line between Americans' rights in relation to the government. They guaranteed civil rights and liberties to each citizen, reserve all powers not delegated to the federal government to the people or the states, and set rules for the due process of law. However, each amendment serves its own purpose. The First Amendment grants freedom of speech, press, religion, assembly, and petition. Citizens are free to gather, speak out, and share their beliefs and opinions, no matter how controversial they may seem. The Second Amendment grants individuals the rights to bear arms. It is a right that has become controversial but cannot be infringed, as it protects the liberty to carry firearms outside the home for self-defense or for other lawful purposes. The Third Amendment places restrictions on the quartering of soldiers and was created in response to the British Quartering Acts. It gave power to the colonists in the late 18th century, as it prevented British soldiers from staying in private homes without the owner's consent. The Fourth Amendment protects U.S. citizens and their personal property from unreasonable searches and seizures. If this amendment was to be violated, any evidence gained as a result of the search cannot be used as direct evidence against the defendant in any criminal prosecution. The Fifth Amendment states that citizens do not have to testify against themselves during a trial. The phrase "pleading the Fifth" is in reference to the Fifth Amendment and allows for the silence or refusal to answer questions to not be used against the defendant in a criminal case.
Today, whether you intend to testify or whether you intend to invoke your Fifth Amendment privilege.
I will invoke my Fifth Amendment privilege today.
The Sixth Amendment provides individuals with the right to a lawyer and a speedy trial by an impartial jury. Without this amendment, defendants could be held indefinitely under unproven criminal accusations. The Seventh Amendment arranges the right to a jury trial in certain civil cases and inhibits courts from overturning a jury's final decision. The jury trial provides a forum for all the facts to be presented, evaluated impartially, and judged according to the law. The Eighth Amendment forbids the actions of cruel and unusual punishments as well as unreasonable bail. Without the Eighth Amendment, and based on the morals of the judge, many defendants proven guilty could end up being punished in an inhumane manner. The Ninth Amendment states that the rights of the people are not limited to just those listed in the Constitution. Those listed outside of the Constitution belong to the people, not the government. The 10th and final amendment to the Bill of Rights enforces that powers not given to the federal government belong to the states. These rights and freedoms are unique to the United States, and if you are born within its borders, you naturally acquire these rights. However, the liberties of the United States can be considered luxurious when compared to those of other countries. Very few countries outside of the U.S. offer their residents even similar liberties to that of the United States. Immigrants are willing to reside in the U.S. illegally because the policies of their home country are so bad, just so they can get a glimpse of what it is like to be a citizen in this country built on freedom. According to the 2020 current population survey gathered by the Migration Policy Institute, immigrants and their U.S.-born children numbered approximately 85.7 million people, or 26% of the U.S. population. When individuals who reside outside of the U.S. were asked how their rights differ from that of the United States, you could see the difference is substantial.
I think where the challenge comes in is that how those rights are exercised or practiced, right? The Americans, I think everywhere in the world, South Africa for sure, people fought for their freedoms. We've got a horrible history, and it's since '94, it has changed tremendously in terms of equal rights for all peoples, all of its citizens. Where it's maybe the same here in the United States, equal rights, everyone gets equal rights to vote, etc. We're very new in that learning curve. I think so many people have died for their freedoms. That in South Africa, I think people realize, hey, it's something that we really fought for. We've got to continue fighting for those freedoms, and we need to exercise them even more. So I think there's some of that, and then those that had all the rights and all the power are possibly very conflicted as a result, because they had all the rights, they had all the power. If you look at certain portions of the population, and maybe they want that power back. So I think from that perspective, maybe that's where South Africa is slightly different. I think where we get it wrong, I think, is that in certain circumstances, people push their freedoms too far, and I think that's the biggest challenge. That's my answer. Will be what yours?
Wow, I love this country because it's a first world country, and South Africa had a lot of challenges, and so far I've yet to come across a challenge in America that I can't say is actually it's been a problem, because everything from the DMV to the shortage of gas, I mean, that's a no problem.
Yeah.
It's not a problem at all.
Yeah, it is. I mean, yeah, that's true.
I mean, we've had load shedding and water shedding.
So
and
load shedding is when
the power company
puts off the power in certain
for 3 hours at a time. You go on like a schedule where they'll just cut your electricity for 3 hours, and you're kind of like on a calendar, and that's just because they're trying to share the electricity amongst the city. And then they did the same with water, because our water was we had a shortage of water, so then they would just chop off the water, cut the water. And so I mean, if you ask me, I'd rather be without electricity than without water.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And so when we had a gas shortage, I was like, that's not a problem. It's really not a problem.
As centuries have passed since the Bill of Rights was written and we've come to today's society, a controversial issue has surfaced in relations to one's civil rights in America. This issue being whether citizens of the United States take their rights or freedoms for granted or if they use them appropriately. According to a poll gathered in 2019 by USA Today, 92% of Americans actually believe that their rights are under siege. However, so many Americans keep their minds focused on only the negative aspects of their country that they begin to lose sight of the positives, causing them to take their rights for granted. Even as the US is far from perfect, there is no excuse for forgetting or neglecting the rights that people defend, fight for, and die for while trying to protect. Many Americans have failed to see how much freedom they really have because they do not know what it is like to live in a world outside of the United States. Those born in the US and those who have lived in the country their whole life do not know what it is like to even go a single day without these rights because it is illegal for them to be taken away. In a survey of 40 US citizens, 90% believe that the citizens of the US take their rights and freedoms for granted, including the right to vote and the right to an education. Many believe that this is because Americans feel entitled and do not understand what life is like outside the borders of their own home.
I believe that U.S. citizens take their rights and freedoms for granted, because you hit on how sometimes they can be pushed too far, but do you believe that they could ever be taken for granted?
Without a doubt.
Absolutely.
Without a doubt. I think if you travel, the more you appreciate it. Like we saw at South Africa. South Africa is an amazing country. It's full of beautiful people, it's super friendly. There's places in South Africa that God had a special places art. If you look at Naarden, the Western Cape, the Highveld, if you look at the hunting ranges and the game farms we have, they're just to die for. So it's an amazing country. So.
It is an amazing country.
And I think our freedoms there are certainly there. And I think we have the rights to many things. The systems aren't as efficient as what they are here. And that efficiency, I think, is where the biggest difference comes in. And I think if you haven't traveled outside of, from an American point of view, you haven't traveled outside of the United States, maybe you won't appreciate what you have in it. So people get frustrated because maybe the subway train station came 5 minutes late. But you have a subway train station that actually works phenomenally well and it's super efficient. So you can get really upset about that. But in reality, they're stealing the cables back in South Africa. So they steal the electric cables for copper to sell it because people are so poor that they resort to crime to make ends meet. Whereas here you don't have that. And here your systems are working, people are paying their taxes. And I think from that perspective, there's definitely some advantage.
This country is absolutely amazing, and I do think that if you don't know what you have, of course you can take it for granted.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Only 7% of people in South Africa pay their taxes, and then 93%.
Yeah, so there's a very small percentage of individuals who pay taxes. I think it's something like that. Mm-hmm. So at best, it's 20% of individuals. At best, I think the stats are about 7%. And that's because there's a lot of poverty there now. Obviously, a lot of people there's tax evasion, I guess, to a point. So the majority of the taxes are raised through corporate tax, value-added tax, sin tax. Like sin tax is tax on alcohol and tobacco and things like
and
that.
Sugar.
And sugar's now sin tax as well. So sugar tax. So they raise the money from that sort of thing. And the challenge of that is that it affects the individuals even more because once those taxes increase on goods, the man in the street's still got to pay for it.
Right.
They still got to buy bread. And it's almost unfair in a way. Whereas if we had more work and the government and business came together and created more jobs and stimulated the economy and created jobs, then you'd have more people earning, more people paying taxes.
Unemployment is so high that I think even if they tried their very best to create jobs, not everyone would be employed.
Yeah,
I think the unemployment rate in South Africa is so high that
and that's why the minimum wage is only $1.50.
The minimum wage is about it. So difficult to get everyone vaccinated with the COVID vaccination, but yet the entire country can vote in one day for our presidency.
Yeah.
So how can they get everyone to vote for the president, but they can't vaccinate over how many months, weeks?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like,
and that could be again a result of corruption. It could be a result of just inefficiencies in certain areas, certain departments. Whereas in the United States, your freedoms here and the law-abiding citizens that you have here. And look, I've been on the highways, and not everyone abides all the laws, right? I mean, people are speeding. There's no doubt about it. I'm driving 70 miles an hour, and people are going out. So not everyone's law-abiding, right? But the truth is that I think the majority of people are law-abiding in the sense that they understand that they're contributing. Their freedoms allow them to have that because of the freedoms they have. They know that their taxes are being utilised for law, for road upkeep, for schooling. Your schooling is free, and your schools are good. Sure, in some parts maybe not as good as others, but your schooling is good. Everyone gets a basic education paid by the state from their taxes.
Meanwhile, in South Africa, you said that
Schooling system is it's deplorable. It's not good at all.
Nothing's free. And there's certain places that, you have to pay certain spots. You would need to pay to use the public toilet. And the only reason why they'll charge you is because they want to keep it clean and neat and tidy. And they don't, obviously the management looks after those block of ablutions. So it's not.
Yeah. And also, I think
and
also
the parks, you pay to go into parks, you pay.
And again, ill-kept parks, often ill-kept. And again, in certain parts of the country, they're not. So, it's also hard to manage where it's managed.
And that's what's so incredible here in this country. And my children even said the same thing. It's amazing that we can go and go on these beautiful nature walks and nature trails but we don't pay for it. Whereas in South Africa, if you want to go anywhere that's especially pretty, you pay for it.
Any national park, I mean, that's the nice experience.
You pay for it. That's why this country is just stunning. It's amazing.
And the schooling thing is also, it's got to do with the history of our country. I mean, the old government did horrible things with Bantu education and stuff. So the biggest mistake they made was deciding to segregate the Land Act, etc. There's a lot of bad things. You can point a lot of fingers there. I'm not going to justify any of that because that was horribly wrong. We have a great opportunity to have that results fixed, I guess. And there's many wonderful people working to fix that. But if you compare the US right now to South Africa right now, there's a lot of amazing things in South Africa that you guys don't have here. A lot. And if I think about the space in terms of the wildlife, the animal life, the safari tours, etc., the coastline. I haven't been to the coast yet, but the beaches and stuff. It's just a beautiful country. But if you compare it like for like right now, the efficiencies here and what you have here is just incredible.
The United States is known worldwide as the land of the free. As you may now know, very few countries offer their residents even similar rights as that of America. As U.S. citizens, it is important that we make sure that land of the free is not just an expression. We need to value our rights, and that as every day goes by, we realize the wealth of freedoms we possess and do not take a single one for granted.